What's up, guys? Polk here, and today we have a special video lined up for you. Uri Peleg, the new Upswing poker coach for Elite Cash Game Exploits, joins the channel. We're going to break down two hands that I recently played in the Lodge 2550 stream. There's some deep stack poker with some straddles and some gambling, some great hands you definitely will not want to miss. Before we jump into it, I want to let you know that today is the last day you can purchase Elite Cash Game Exploits and receive Redline Rocket Ship, Uri's additional course on the side completely for free to go along with your purchase. So if you're interested in checking out the course, today is the day to do so. All right, on that note, let's go ahead and jump into our hands with Uri. So this first hand, I'm going to set the stage here for everyone. If you did not see this hand, it was a 2050 live stream from the Lodge the other day. One of the players at the table, he has been doing a good amount of drinking, as you can tell from the empty bottle of liquor in the top left of your screen. Also, another bottle that's been opened. He's been playing aggressive. He's been playing loose. He's been playing 2 out of every 3 hands, 3-betting all the time. There is a dynamic where I've been trying to set some traps because he's to my direct left. If he does squeeze, I want to be able to re-raise him. We had a hand earlier where I trapped ace-king versus an open. He squeezed. The original raiser took the bait and jammed ace-4 suited over the top, and I had the ace-king, and so I got all in for a big pot. And then there's a bit of a dynamic going here as well, where whenever it folds to me, he's always straddling bigger than I am. So whenever it folds to me, I limp in and he raises me. And I told him I'm going to trap him here in one of these spots. And the hand before this one, I tried to limp re-raise him as a bluff, and he jammed an air ball. And when I folded, he tabled a 3. So that's the kind of dynamic we got going into the hand. It's certainly going to be an aggressive one. We're about 13.5K deep or so, and the action once again folds to me in the straddle, but he's the double straddle. So we'll go ahead and we will roll the clip.
Seriously, I don't want to do it every time because I feel like I'm getting taken advantage of.
I do want you to leave one.
Thank you.
I've been in there for 200. Well, people be in there.
Okay.
Sal Reedus won the $1,380 today. We'll be getting in touch with Sal.
71% plus of you.
All right, folds around to me in the small blind or in the straddle. I look down to the ace king and decide to call.
310 on top.
Adam tries to make it 310 on top, but is forced to make it 325.
Big slick here for Doug.
525 is the total bid.
Raise, make it 2,500.
And we decided to limp raise to 2,500 here with ace king. What are your thoughts on the decision to go for the limp raise here, and what do you think about the size that we decided to go for?
So I guess first question, when he tabled an airball, did he have an airball, or was it maybe pocket 3s?
I guess it's possible that it was pocket 3s, but when somebody is playing this high of VIP and you're seeing just lots of random showdowns, cold calls with the 5-4 offsuit, 3-bets with the Jack-3 offsuit, in there with all the hands all over the place, it's definitely possible he had ace-3 suited or pocket 3s. I don't know what I would set the line on that compared to him just having a random hand that has a 3 in it, but it's certainly possible it was pocket 3s.
Okay. Just I'm trying to kind of construct a player profile in my head of how crazy and gambly and drunk the guy is. Yeah, I think the way he's playing, you have to limp. Because maybe if you raise, he won't 3-bet, and that's a huge disaster for you. And like you said, he's guaranteed raising any limp. So definitely limp, definitely 3-bet, kind of as big as you feel you can get away with. I feel like your size is the standard GTO size for this kind of spot. Like it's a good solid size. Very often against this type of player, they're not very sizing sensitive. Like if he's cold calling 3-bets with 4 or 5 off, he probably doesn't care too much. He's just kind of gambling it up. So always try to kind of push the limits of these guys. I have in the past sometimes like limp 3-bet to 60 big blinds and gotten called like that. That's a thing. And you gain big edges by doing these things. So it's fairly okay to experiment with this in terms of sizings. Yeah, I know. I think it's a very solid way to play. You could probably push him a bit more in terms of like, I doubt he would fold any of his range if you go 6x, 6.5x, the way you're describing him.
I guess I didn't want to risk doing something out of the norm that gets a fold for the first time. And because I had just limply raised to roughly this size and gotten jammed
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Then you should do the same one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we make it 2.5K. He decides to call.
Doug
You-
makes it
You
2.5.
can you
Adam.
can you hear the
Nope.
audio, Uri, or you cannot?
I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm just gonna turn off the audio then because I don't want our audience to be hearing stuff that you're not hearing. It changes the dynamic of it a little bit. So we go for the limpy raise. He does make the call. Kind of awkward SPR now. We have a pot of 5K. We have 11K behind. What are your thoughts on the 2 spade, 1 club flop here? Are you c betting? How often are you c betting? I obviously don't have a spade or club. Not a great situation for my ace king. How are you managing the spot?
Okay, so again, everything here is in the context of the player type. I think that's extremely important. Against this type of player, you kind of have to decide how much money you're putting in with your hand, and you can take standard bluff lines. If you would, for example, go 1/3 pot here with ace king without like happily calling him down, this is a type of player who's going to float you and bluff raise you and put you under pressure, and it's kind of just burning money if you're playing ace king standard against this player type. So I generally try to have a different plan for value and for bluffs against people like this. If I want to bluff, which, you know, it's reasonable to bluff ace king on this board. Ace king is kind of a nice bluff on queen high boards because you have the 2 overs on a flop, you have the 2 overs on a turn, you block the top of his range on the river, so it makes a reasonable triple barrel bluff. I think that's one reasonable line, given how wide he is. There's a decent chance he's gonna like call with a gut shot, fold the river, call with 5s, fold the river, whatever. Like I think that's reasonable. I'd never one and done bluff for a small bet. If I were planning to one and done bluff, I'd go half pot or 2/3 pot.
So my thoughts here. I don't love triple barreling because I definitely think he's capable of calling me down very wide, which makes me wonder how many hands I'm really getting him off. I mean, maybe if he called with something that had a 3 or a deuce in it pre-flop, definitely possible. Maybe those. But I guess the way I'm thinking about this is this board is pretty dry. I feel like we're going to get value if we bet any calls. So I kind of feel like I need to bet just because his range is so wide that he's going to float me with a bunch of different hands.
I think that, like I said, as long as you plan a whole hand through, here the fact he calls you wide, like you said, his pre-flop range is so wide that him calling you down wide doesn't necessarily mean he's defending enough of his range to stop you profiting. But yeah, I would agree. If you bet flop, you're probably ahead of his calling range. The trouble is going to be navigating ace king on future streets. So the big question I would ask you, because this guy has actually been playing every hand, does he then value bet and just bet pairs randomly, or is he taking a medium strength hand to showdown? Like, is that something you've noticed about how he plays?
I wouldn't feel confident enough. I've seen some thin value bets. I've seen some wild bluffs. I've seen some thick value bets. I've seen the whole enchilada here, Uri. I can't say one way or another too much.
I like that this guy, if you bet, he might raise you with 6s. He might call 6s and bet twice after to whatever reason, right? Like you don't have confidence about how he would play these types of medium strength hands.
I think if he raises the flop here, I'm just going to jam. Because even if he has a queen, unless it's ace queen or king queen, I still have 25-ish% equity. If he's raising to get a draw in, we're flipping. If he's bluffing, definitely possible. Then I just take the pot down. I think that
So I think the line is probably that small, then check and don't fold. Kind of close your eyes and call down.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and see why I decided to bet on the flop. 1400. We're on board with this.
Yeah, good size. Good size, assuming you're not intending to fold.
Well, let's see how this develops because it's never easy. He makes the call. Turn is the 4 of spades. Stuff is beginning to get kind of dicey. What do we think now here on the turn?
I'm actually happy that turns the 4 of spades. I feel like, you know, it's kind of a fake scare card given how wide the guy's range is. I would be a little bit worried he tries bluffing you with a pair now, repping the flush, and that really hurts if you're intending to call him down with ace king high. But yeah, there are so many hands in his range. He's not so many offsuit hands in his range. It's not a good card for you, obviously, but I'm not too worried. Like the flush coming in might limit how thin he bets his queens, for example. He might not bet turn shove river with a top pair anymore with a flush there.
So what line are we taking here? Just check call?
I think so.
What's our game plan for rivers here? Look, I trust in your instincts here, but I decided on this turn I'm just going to check fold because, frankly, I block all kinds of floats that I want him to have. If he is bluffing me, he's got a ton of equity. I'm going to have miserable river decisions here. Is it too nitty just to check, let this one go, or you think we need to call and see some rivers?
So it's not. It all depends on how confident you are about how the guy plays. Like I said, the standard play is the way you played it. Like this is the GTO player definitely beating him pre-flop, and you're taking a good line post-flop. The thing is with this type of player, you often can gain much bigger edges than taking these lines because his range is so wide and his tendencies are so clear in the direction of kind of fucking around with his range, right? Like just piling in money and gambling. This is kind of why I said if you're gonna check fold on a 4 of spades, I would have wanted to see you see bet bigger with ace king. So to me, the two go together. See betting small, then check folding on. Like to me, this is a random card. When you bet that small, he probably has very little faults.
So basically,
you're describing him.
Yeah, it might be a situation too where when I bet that small, his flush draws are likely to raise, so he doesn't really have that many flushes in his range when he does decide to call.
Yeah. So in my eyes, the way you played it is like the standard good way that most guys would play your hand. And I think the way you're describing this player, I would deviate from that in a serious way. I'd be super on balance. This is not a guy who's reading into your range or your sizings in more than a very basic way. And because he's looking to float you, and ace king isn't a hand that wants to get floated, as you're seeing now, because there are so many turns where you're gonna check and he's gonna do something. I would not put this hand into this line. I'd either check flop or half pot flop, and quarter pot flop for me is for hands that I'm intending to mostly call down. And maybe you're not confident enough about doing that against this guy, which is fair. Like calling down ace high is not a brilliant play. Like we said, maybe bluffs you with sixes because he thinks you have jacks, who knows? Like that's definitely a thing that happens. So if that were the case, like I said, I would just never see bet small with ace king if you're not confident enough that you're going with it.
Okay, well, we don't end up finding out because this turn does go check, check. I will say as well, I just realized that this river size, the stack size has to be wrong because I remember very specifically on the river him having 12.7. So river is a queen.
That's a very good card for you.
It is. I check, and he goes all in. Counted out. I'm almost positive this was 12.7, not 9.7. So it's 12.7 here, and the river begins. Now, I want to take a moment to say not many people are chatterboxes on the river when they go all in, but this
Mhm.
guy was chit-chatting up a storm.
Mhm.
He's did that in every river. It's not like I think this is a particular read in this hand. He's doing this all over the place. I think he's actually quite balanced with it. He's certainly kind of drunk, but I also feel like he's the kind of guy who's been drunk a time or two. So it's not his first rodeo being hammered at the poker table. And I end up taking quite a long time thinking about this before I make my decision. At one point, he ends up berating me about how long I'm taking and just aggressively insulting me for how long that I'm taking. And I tanked for a very long period of time here because I thought it was extremely close. What do you think here? Pretending that we don't for a second know that he has ace 10 showing us his whole cards.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you tank. Like the first thing to recognize which you do is that you're beating all his bluffs. So it's a legitimate bluff catching decision. This guy has, really wide ranges. Looking at the timing, it looked like he put a huge bet in really fast in a spot where you seem weak, right? Like you bet small, then check twice. If you're thinking, again, I don't know how this guy is playing most of the time. You always have to compare it to the baseline, but assuming he doesn't always bet very, very fast, this is often an attempt to scare you, right? You look weak, he's trying to look strong with his timing and his sizing together. So whenever I look weak against a big recreational and he makes a huge bet really, really fast, I get really suspicious. I'm guessing you might have felt that. I don't know if consciously or unconsciously. And yeah, it's really a tough spot because this is not a spot where I'm thinking too much about your blockers or your removal effects. I'm more thinking, which hands have I seen him play? What does the timing mean? Like all these types of things. Because yeah, randomizing GTO, etc. Your hand should probably just fold, right? I'm sure you realize that the hand should probably fold.
Is this hand better to call than a hand like tens? Because in the moment I really felt that it was better to have the ace and the king because those cards are less likely to be bluff cards than hands like cards like a jack, a 10, a 9, those types of hands.
Let me think. So
the other problem I have in this spot is that the pot is 7 to 8K or whatever it is here. It's 2,500 pre each. It's a 5K, and I bet 1,400 on the flop. So, yes, it's roughly 7K. And his all-in was 12.7K. There's some chips, I think, hiding behind the board. And a big problem that I have here is I feel like some players, let's just put this player to the side, but a very common thing I find when I play live poker is that players will bluff for the small size because they want to try and win versus just air, right? I really haven't defined my hand whatsoever other than betting and checking from there, so I can have all my weak hands that would definitely check fold. And then when they have a good hand, they try to make sure that they win every chip. And this just strikes me as a spot where if he has a queen, 100% he's going all in. He's going to try and stack me every time he has a queen. And I think a queen ends up in this line quite often. I think if he has a good queen, he might raise the flop occasionally, he might bet the turn occasionally, but he's got a ton of queens. And I think they're going to...
It's a tough spot. I guess, again, ignoring the fact I know his hand, that there is a decent chance I'd look for a better spot to pick this guy off. I think it's a fairly tough call to make with ace king high against an overbet. You need to, again, you have to with this kind of player kind of observe everything he's doing. When you think about your win rate, this guy's going to have betting patterns and timing patterns that are very obvious, and if you pick up on them, then this decision becomes very easy some of the time. Like maybe this guy value bets smaller. Maybe that could be a pattern for a player like this.
Doesn't strike me as true for this guy, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, but you should know. You should know. Because sometimes you see the guy value betting the nuts for half pot on the river, and then he does this, you just snap call if you've seen that in the past. But yeah, with no further information, I would probably fold in your shoes.
Well, we go through the pain deliberation, and then we finally do end up folding.
Yeah,
I'm giving him the whole. I'm just thinking it. I'm really thinking about this, and then after a very long tank, I let it go, and you can see all of my chips have been sprinkled into his extremely organized stack. And you can see those blacks were in there. We didn't see those from the angle. Yeah.
And what hand strength would you have needed to call in your eyes?
Well, I would have rather had a high spade. I think those hands are just slightly better in case you get trapped. I don't think I'm getting trapped too often, but it makes just a little touch better. I would definitely trap him a bunch there. That's the thing. When the good news when I play a player like this is I'm going to trap them a ton because I just know I'm getting a lot of action in these spots when I check. So, for example, when that turn completes the flush, I'm mainly checking my flushes. I would barrel some so I could have some small bet range with some high spades and some overpairs and some. But I'm going to be doing a lot of checking, particularly with nut flush, second nut flush kinds of hands. So I know I'm going to have traps there. And I might not even have bets on the river. I might only check the river. And if I have a queen, I can just snap them off. So I'm really not too concerned about that. There are some players where you really want to be value betting. It's easier when you know they're going to be really aggressive with you when you check, because then you can just trap them a bunch.
Yeah, so I guess you would basically value bet jacks, tens, nines, kings, aces yourself on the river, and then just trap the good stuff.
I would probably mainly check and then have small amount of blocks, and then I would probably anything that would be jamming the river, I'd probably just be betting the turn myself and looking to mainly jam the river when I do bet.
Yes, so I think it's important for you to bet hands like nines and tens on the river rather than checking. Like you said, you could block that. They're actually good enough to bet fairly big on this run out. But yeah, I think it's a good plan. And I think the only thing that strikes me about the fold, and this is something I always tell people, is that if you really feel like calling down with ace king high, or some really shitty hand, and you're really tempted to call a huge bet with a really shitty hand, and you're not tilted, there's often something about the situation that your conscious mind is not processing all the way, because this should be a snap fold for someone like you, the way you play. Like, you should not be considering this hand as a call. You know how your range looks, you know how the board looks. Like, you know this is not a hand that's supposed to call. So just the fact that you're considering it for such a long time. You remember the high stakes hand where Ivy almost called one down with ace six in some huge pot, and one was actually bluffing.
Yeah.
I think there's something about, like, if I have if you had trips there and you were tanking and really unsure, you should probably fold. And if you have ace king and you're tanking and unsure, you should probably call. Does that make sense?
So if it's very close but you're tanking, then the deciding factor should be that you've picked up something in some fashion. Because in my heart in this spot, I really felt like I should have to call. And you know what's actually kind of weird too? When I play heads up, or if I'm two-tabling someone, or I'm in a match, and I get this feeling I will call. But what I worry about when I play ring is you just get this one moment, and then you might not play another big pot for the rest of the night. This could just be your only moment. And so you don't want to basically make a mistake in the one big pot that you're going to play where you're going to get almost no sample, especially in a format where my experience playing live poker this year has been not much of this. It's been lots of people trying to pile drive value into me. So I feel a little bit gun shy because this could be the only big pot that I play, and I've just been getting hammered by people with value, that it makes me feel a lot more apprehensive about trying to bluff catch, even though in my heart, I felt the call in my heart here, Uri. I felt it in my heart.
I know what you mean. Like, this is a serious thing. The fact that you tank with such a shitty hand, you can... I always think that you have a cognitive, like, there's an emotional bias. Emotionally, you want to fold this on the river because you'll feel really bad if you call and lose. And emotionally, if you have aces on the river, you really want to call because you want to win the pot when you have aces, like you expect to win. And I think these are kind of real biases that interfere with our decision making. So for that reason, I like the call. But definitely, if you've been getting hammered for a while making these calls, there is a reasonable chance you're just on some kind of soft tilt, and then you should just not trust your instincts for a while till you feel good about the game again.
Definitely been some soft tilt. By the way, I'm not the only one getting hammered at this table. Adam has got a drink in his hand as we speak. All right, that's the end of the first hand here. We're just going to break 2 down because, Uri, we like to talk and we go pretty long here. So we're going to be back with one more hand I've played at the lodge shortly. We're back now with our second hand. Originally, I was going to break down a different hand, but this one we thought would be a better hand to talk about. It's probably not one that you've seen, and it is a fun one. So our action begins. Gabe opens up the cutoff with ace-10 suited. There is a $100 straddle out there. He makes it $300 to go. I'm in the small blind, and maybe we can even just start off right here. So King 10, not a normal hand I like to get in there with in the small blind. But I feel like Adam's going to be in there a ton with all kinds of stuff. I don't hate my King 10 against that. Should I, am I getting too fancy here? Or should I just let this go and move on? Or what do you think about potentially calling here to try and get in the mix and see a flop with Adam?
Yeah, this all depends basically on your reads against the guy. To VPIP something like King 10 here, you need to think that if you hit a king or a 10, you're getting a significant amount of money in a head against him often, if that makes sense. So if he's just calling wide pre-flop and then he fit or folds a flop and fit or folds a turn or something like that, then this probably does not work out too well. But if he's like, you know, hit any pair, call you for 3 streets, raise you with a gut shot, you easily call him down. That this kind of guy, which is, I think, is what he sounds like from how we're describing him. Then this is actually a great hand because you make good top pairs. You're going to have good visibility and just kind of close your eyes, click call against him, or make thick value bets. So I think.
I at the time I liked this more, but as I think back on it, he was just re-raising all kinds of garbage a lot. And I feel like I'm going to get 4-bet. He's going to get 4 by the opener a lot. And if I do call a 3-bet, I'm going to have to call his 3-bet. And now I'm going to be playing big pots out of position with King 10 offsuit. Maybe if they're squeezing a lot, this should just go in the muck.
I mean, it depends on how much is a lot. Is he squeezing like half the time or so?
I don't have 3-bet stats, but he's in there a lot. In there quite frequently, as you're about to see here with the 8-3 of hearts. But he's in there quite frequently.
Because I'm almost the way this guy's being described. I would almost call and then 4-bet his 3-bet for value, and that's almost the way you're describing it.
Wow, Uri, we should have had you in this game instead of me. We would have had some more defensive strategies. But okay. Anyway, we call. Adam re-raises to 1.8 thousand with the 8-3 of hearts. Pretty standard big blind raise. Straddle gets out of the way. Not standard. Gabe thinks it over, makes the call in the cutoff.
Yeah, I love 4-betting this spot. I think, you know, you're not ahead of Gabe's range right now. Like you see, you're actually dominated. This is going to be the case often. But if you 4-bet, Gabe is probably folding most of his range, and you're not doing badly against Adam. Like I would not be shocked if you 4-bet and Adam flats you with 8-3 suited here. Like I know this is like a really out there play. But when someone's playing, you know, squeeze 8-3 suited, get in a mix all the time, you have to think about. You just get these weird dynamics where there is potential for very creative play. That there's a ton of dead money sitting here, right? Like Adam is, how deep is Adam? He's 14K deep. There's almost 5K in the pot. King 10 is not doing too bad. If you re-squeeze to like 7K, pure folds, you just gamble against Adam's range. Think that's probably where I'd go.
Wow. The re-squeeze to 7K. Well, you're definitely going to get Gabe out of there because Gabe's not going to be flatting lots of traps. He's going to re-raise a bunch. He's going to bluff 4-bet for sure. He already 4-bet the ace-4 suited earlier, gets 3-bet. He's going to play aggressive with Adam, no doubt about it. But don't you worry that Adam just puts it in with a lot of the hands ahead of us? Is he really going to fold 8s? I don't think so. Is he really going to fold ace-queen, ace-jack? I don't think so.
I don't think he's going to fold the ace-7 offsuit. This is like think about this like an MTT, right? Like there is there's probably roughly 4K in the middle right now. If you stack off, you would be risking 12K to win 4K. So you don't need to get that many folds. And this guy has clearly a very wide range for this play to work out okay.
What makes you say that? I'm kidding. He has 8-3 suited. It was a joke. All right, so the limp re-raise. All right, I don't do that. I just make the call, and we're going to be playing some post flop. I'm trying to hit pairs. Let's see.
So yeah, like you were saying, I feel like pre-flop this way I would probably rather have folded. Again, mostly because I'm worried about Gabe having, you know, king jack, king queen, ace jack, ace 10.
Flop goes check, check, check. Turn 10. Pot's 5.5K. Thoughts now. Do we take the lead here? Or do you like to set the trap? What are your thoughts here?
I'm shocked that Gabe checked back. That feels like a very surprising play given his hand in the situation. Yeah, I think you just bet. Adam, by not c-betting, has shown that he has something that he's pot controlling. It might be ace king, it might be, you know, 6-5. We don't know. You clearly have the best hand. I would, you know, just fire out not a huge bet, but a reasonably sized bet.
2.4, a little more 1/3-ish pot type, 40% pot type bet. Too small?
Yeah. No, it's perfect. It's
okay.
Perfect.
Adam does make the call. So does Gabe. So the hand's about to go off the rails here. What are you putting both of these players on when they make this call on the turn?
So like I said, Adam, to me, the way this was played with a squeeze and a check, and given how wide he is, I would assume this is either something like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, one of those hands, or some 6 or 8 or pocket 7s, pocket 9s. And here, like I'm thinking, you know, king 6, 8, 9, pretty much anything that hit the board is in his range except for a 10.
What do you think about Gabe here?
Gabe overcalling is a lot scarier. Again, intuitively, I would not have expected him to ever check back a hand as strong as his hand. So I'm more putting him on a flush draw or a straight draw, like a jack 9, spades, something in that area, in terms of where the bulk of his range is going to be.
Wouldn't a lot of spades hands bet the flop?
Not necessarily, because you're at an SPR where if he bets and get raised, he has to fold his hand. So, you know, flush draws bet a lot more at deep stacked play than they do at short stacked play. Deep stacked, you get to bet and continue. Against a raise, short stacked, you're torching a ton of equity. So it's a lot dicier to bet a draw.
Well, so let's think about the types of flush draws, right? If he has a hand that's like a pair plus flush draw or a flush draw plus straight draw, he's going to be able to bet those, because then even if he gets raised, he doesn't have to fold.
Yeah, those are
ace 9 of spades, jack 9 of spades, 8 9 of spades. If he has a hand like ace queen of spades, still doesn't have to fold. He can continue with that.
I think it would be terrible of him to not 4-bet ace queen of spades for what it's worth. But I'm thinking more like ace 5 of spades in terms of, you know, ace 5, king jack.
King jack makes sense. King queen makes sense.
But yeah, I love how you break down the combos. That's very helpful. I'm thinking more kind of in broad terms. So yes, somehow to me it feels like a draw. I can't, like, it's just tough for me to see other hands. I agree with you, there aren't too many, but yeah, how can you not bet top pair, or how can you get here with middle pair and call? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. But what he could be thinking here is, I'm either bluffing a bunch or value betting thin or something. Queen jack suited, queen 9 suited, jack 9 suited. Maybe I'm betting a hand with spades. He could have a hand like 9s or 9-8 suited or 7s. Think those are good. And then Adam, I don't think anyone's too scared by his call. So
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, not nines makes sense. Nines makes a lot of sense.
all right, Jack of Spades. We're about to go off the beaten path here, Uri, and I'm gonna come clean on this one. I was trying to make an exploit, maybe even an elite cash game exploit, the way that this ended up playing out. But
Okay.
what are your thoughts on going for a river bet here against these two players, knowing that we still have Adam in the hand and giving Gabe's call behind?
So I'm a bit worried. I don't know Adam well enough. Like, how wide is he calling? I think if you bet river on a jack of spades, it looks extremely strong. I'd expect Gabe to fold anything except flushes, which, like we said, he could have a few. You mentioned you'd expect him to bet a lot, so maybe you're thinking he probably doesn't. So I think once you bet, you are hoping Gabe just has, 9-7s, jack-9, queen-jack, whatever hand like that. But the bet looks so scary. I almost would rather check and hope Adam bluffs with his 8-3 of hearts. Because I would imagine you bet and they just both fold all the time, the way the board ran out.
Is the jack of spades a kind of card that blocks way more of the flushes, the kinds of flushes that he could have, like a king jack of spades, like an ace jack of spades?
Yeah, I think you're reasonably ahead. I just think it's a bit tough to get called because turn was three-way and then Jack puts the obvious draw there. It's one of those spots where you have to be really out there to call you with a worse hand than king 10.
We decide to bet half pot, trying to get Adam to go for the hero call. Not too worried about what Gabe has behind.
Yep.
Snap fold from Gabe. Sorry, from Adam. And now Gabe.
Yeah, exactly.
Gabe is now in the tank. What are your thoughts here in Gabe's shoes?
So I think first of all, before talking about Gabe, the snap fold from Adam, I think is very obvious. And that's why in your shoes, like to get value from Adam, he does see the board. He does see the flush. He does have a pot control hand. This is an overcard to the board. I think the best way to get value is either to bet 1 or 2K, hope he bluff raises, or to check. Like this would be an amazing bluffing spot. As far as Gabe is concerned, you're asking what would I be thinking in his shoes? I'd be, you kind of expect him to call because you could have a 10. He shouldn't be very excited about calling with a flush out there. It does not look like you're ever bluffing. I'd say queen 9 got there, but no one expects you to have queen 9, though obviously you might have it, given you have king 10. So
it's possible.
Maybe you have 9-7 suited, but yeah, I would feel he's in a really tough spot with ace 10 because this is one of those spots where you are probably never bluffing. So it's not a standard bluff catching spot where you think about blockers. This often happens in multi-way ring where, if there are 3 of you and one of you is probably calling way too much, the other 2 stop bluffing. And it could be very face up to the 2 of you that neither of you is ever bluffing into Adam. And then his threshold for calling is no longer like, do I beat any value bets? But he actually has to beat a fair amount of value bets in order to justify a call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because if there's no bluffs, you need to have a higher. You need to beat enough value bets. It's not about.
Yeah, and this is a spot where, like, even if starting on the turn you had bluffs, it is very difficult for you to still have them on this river, given that you're probably betting with equity into 2 people.
I think I would bluff here if I had king queen with a spade, or.
But would you bet turn with king queen with a spade?
I think so.
You think so?
I think
would not recommend that. I would not have recommended that. But
got a little spade blocker action. Got a couple clean overcards, and you've got the power of a river barrel behind you. I don't see a reason why. Uri, if I'm gonna be playing hands like the King 10 offsuit here pre-flop, probably gonna have to make some moves when I inevitably brick some boards.
I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to. You're playing King 10 for value against the 8-3. You can just play your cards. But yeah, I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from. So I think, yeah, if he thinks you have bluffs, he has to call ace-10. If not, he probably, it's just very close. It's a really tough spot with ace-10.
He was suffering here, Uri. He was suffering in this spot. A lot of tanking in tough spots at the lodge. He folds, and I tell him I have King 10. And he says he folded A10 sheepishly until he came clean that he actually also, or he also had a 10. He had the ace 10, had me out kicked. So it was a little bit of a confusing hand here for both of us.
He said he folded what? Sorry?
At first, he said he folded a 10.
Oh, a 10, and then he told you it was ace-10.
Eventually, because I think he didn't want a poker hands episode. But
that is one of the most painful type of folds that you can make in poker. That's something you remember for the rest of your life.
Well, I'm glad that I managed to give him a hand he could remember for the rest of his life. Fun fact, by the way, before we call it a session here, Uri, those two guys, my second bracelet, the tag team, they were a team. We played them heads up. Me and Ryan Fee played those two heads up for the bracelet.
Which two guys?
Adam and Gabe.
Oh wow, those two guys in the hand with you.
Yeah, we played heads up for a bracelet, and I was playing the one drop at the time. And on my 20-minute break between levels, I went over to my final table, played some heads up. Gabe ran it on me. I called him down. I went back to the one drop afterwards, and we ended up winning.
Did you win both? Did you win the tag team too?
Well, it was a different one drop. That one drop, I bricked getting Jackson for a ton of blinds in a spot that you would never have done yourself. So there you have it.
Yeah, it's a really cool hand. Really cool hand. These type of spots, for what it's worth, some guys do actually make the bet expecting Adam to fold and Gabe, like Adam to call worse and Gabe to fold better. There are spots where you expect that to happen. Like this would not be one of them to me. But like, let's say if the river were a deuce and you had something like ace-8, I think you could reasonably expect Adam to call you with worse and Gabe to fold pocket nines.
Well,
if that makes sense.
I'm not that talented yet, Uri, but maybe one day. And maybe if I get into Elite Cash Game Exploits, Uri, today's the final day, Friday, for them to get the bonus content. Why don't you tell them about the bonus content for today that they can get if they purchase the course now?
The idea of Redline Rocket Ship has to do with, adjusting to the players you're playing against. Kind of like we've been talking this whole session. We're not looking to play GTO when we don't have to. Kind of the premise of the course is that in a lot of games, you don't need to play GTO. There are much higher EV strategies if you're paying attention to what your opponents are doing, keeping track. You can make much higher EV decisions and get really creative, have a ton of fun while playing. Like you can imagine had you 4-bet King 10 and everyone folds, that's a pretty fun play.
That's pure Redline Rocket Ship if I've ever seen it.
Yeah. So you guys have how many days left for the Rocket Ship course?
Today is the final day to get it free with Elite Cash Game Exploits.
So go get it.
All right, there we go. Thank you, Uri, for joining us today.
Thanks, Doug. It was fun.
Thanks for stopping by today. And if you want to check the course out, I'll put a link in the description below. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Peace.